is also important, because these UN forces that go into dangerous situations, and I'm suggesting they should now go into the Temple Mount area and safeguard it. They want their own museum, and it'll be here in Barcelona. So yes, hats off to Barcelona, which has got plans to hold the World Peace Forum. And somebody called Carlotta spoke passionately about this. And they want this to be not just for Barcelona, but for the whole Mediterranean region. So they have plans to build peace walks in Marseille and other Mediterranean cities. And I've suggested, why not in Tel Aviv and Gaza? They're both Mediterranean cities. I want the Mediterranean to be a sea of peace. When I was a little boy, my family used to go from Brighton down to the beaches of the Côte d'Azur every summer. I used to love swimming in the Mediterranean. It felt like the motherland. When I was older, I used to go to Greece and swim there. I've swum off the shores of Slovenia. You know, the Mediterranean is everybody's peace sea. Let's not pollute it with yet more wars, please. And let's get Israel, Palestine, Gaza enjoying their Mediterranean lifestyles together. The olive is a symbol of God's light in the Quran, and in Athens, and in the Greek mythology, and in Hebrew mythology, in the Bible. It's the olive branch that the bird finds after Noah's Ark finally comes, to rest. So the olive is the tree of the Mediterranean region. Let's sit under our olive trees in peace, with the dove of peace that Picasso drew, not in hatred anymore. So hats off to Barcelona. I think, as a devotee of Raymond Lull, the great Mallorcan intellectual, Catalan intellectual, he stands over this peace work also. Right, so that was a little glimpse of what we did there. I was moved to be invited, and then we had breakouts and discussions. And please come next year to the Luxembourg Peace Prize. So I want to just move on few other points here. The other thing we discussed in the World Intellectual Forum is this new commission of inquiry into the etiology of coronavirus. Here we are, all sitting down in lockdown still, with suffering. People are dying. 3.5 million people have died. And somebody on the call said it's probably a much bigger figure. That's just the official recorded deaths. What about the people that have just gone off and died in the woods and whatever? Well, it's shocking, and we still don't know the etiology of this. So I've set up a commission to inquire into that, and I've contacted 80 leading scientists, virologists, epidemiologists, and other experts. And I will be having hearings on Zoom for specialists over the next few months. Also, American intelligence has been announced by Biden to be investigating this. But, and the WHO is going to create a new part 2 of its commission of inquiry into the origins of the virus, because they didn't really find out when they went to Wuhan. So there's a lot of work to be done. And if you have any knowledge, information, genuine scientific, information on this, please email me with it. The other thing I want to say that was on our Zoom call for World Intellectual Forum, and we've spoken about before, is my colleague Christian Kirsch in Berlin is trying to set up the Delphic Games revival, and to balance the Olympic Games, which stress sort of heroic physicality. Now that's great. We've all watched the runners and the throwers of javelins and the swimmers, and it's super. But we're not just material beings showing off our physical prowess, us humans. We're spiritual beings showing off our cultural, intellectual, and artistic prowess. And I believe peace will only come when we shift the emphasis a bit from the heroic, look, I've got bigger muscles than you and I can beat you at wrestling, to let's make a dance together. Let's see how we can do a mural together. Let's see how we can make art out of guns or nuclear rockets. I think art is a more cooperative sport, if you want, or activity. And, so the Delphic Games are a historical fact. They took place every 4 years in Delphi. And I believe they should be restarted in Delphi. I'm working with an action group to effect that. I've been to Delphi. It is it is the most sacred place in Europe, still, I would say. And it was the homeland of the greatest oracle, and the god of prophecy is Apollo. And it was therefore his oracle. You went to Delphi if you were at the end of your wits and didn't know what to do. Now Apollo, fortunately, is also the god of healing, the god of medicine, because his son, Asclepius, was the founder of Greek medicine. And all doctors in the world swear the Hippocratic Oath. Now Hippocrates was a devotee of Asclepius. He worked within that ancient Greek medical school. And in a sense, so do I. You know, I'm a philosopher in that Greek lineage of the Pythagorean school, and we honour Asclepius and Apollo. Aristotle set up the Lyceum dedicated to Apollo. Apollo is the god of philosophy, if you want. Now he's the light bringer, who is the light god, the equivalent to Lugh in the Celtic tradition, L-U-G-H, who gave his name to Lyon and London and Carlisle. He was the great light god of Europe. So Apollo, when the Greeks met the Druids, they said, hey, you worship Apollo too. So they called Stonehenge a temple to Apollo. That's in the classic Greek texts. They didn't mean literally Apollo, they meant Lu, the sun god, and yet it's a temple to the same thing. So I want to help, as the Archdruid of Europe's Peace Druids, rebirth these Delphic Games. And please help me, please help Christian. If you're an artist, a theatre person, a musician, a poet, a dancer, an intellectual, a philosopher, you know, let's make Delphi a celebration of the world's creativity. You know, there are still great artists on this planet, and great poets, and great visionaries. We're not all violent warmonger types. We are lovers. We're lovers of beauty and life. Let's make Delphi the place where we celebrate that every 4 years. So within the next 4 years, I invite you to come to Delphi and do your work. You know. Right, now I want to move on and just say a bit about philosophy, because here at the Museum of the Muses, you see Apollo worked with 9 muses who were the line managers and organisers of the music in heaven, which is Mount Olympus. So archetypally, they represent these qualities of soul that bring hope, bring nourishment to the soul of man. And that's what the arts do. That's what poetry does. That's what music does. That's why I have here the Museum of the Muses, which is also the European Peace Museum. Now, philosophers like me are trying desperately to save this world from self-destruction. You know, we work with all the traditions to try and emphasize love and sustaining this world. One of the things I've done, as you know, is develop a mathematical approach to this. And I think that we need to use the mathematical skills of science to emphasize the detailed objective study of each other's spiritual and intellectual traditions. To me, philosophy has to be global, comparative. If you don't know something about all 163 boxes of the periodic table of religions, then you're illiterate. You can't say, oh, I just know about logical positivism, I'm a philosopher. Come on, that's only one box. You can't say, no, I'm a Marxist, I'm a dialectical materialist, that's all I know about. The rest are all poppycock. No, that's illiteracy. You can't say, I'm a Roman Catholic, I know all there is to be known. I'm, you know, a great professor of Roman Catholicism. No, that's just one box. And so on with Shinto, Sikh, Jain, Buddhist, Jewish, Islamic. You know, we need to now grow up as a planet and know about all of them, because I'm a planetary citizen, as are you. And now we have no excuse, because we have the internet, we have the facilities. We're the first generation in history to have the chance to learn all this stuff. And so let's do it. Let's rise to the occasion and stop being small-minded, petty little trench dwellers, like the people in World War I that stuck in their trenches and fired shots at each other. That's what they're still doing in a lot of academia. There's trench warfare between one school of anthropology and another, or one school of sociology or economics and another. I mean, come on guys, let's stop the trench warfare and get into the planetary cruising and learn the whole 168 boxes at the periodic table. and get with the real, light squad, the team of Luke and Apollo. To do that, we need to cultivate awareness of what I call prophetic intelligence. One of the problems that came up on our World Intellectual Forum meeting today is this concept of my prophet is better than yours. Maimonides said, Moses is the best prophet who ever lived. He's the top prophet. Nobody comes near him. Christians say Jesus was the top prophet. He's the best spiritual teacher. He's the Son of God. Nobody comes near him. Muslims say Muhammad is the best prophet. He's the final, the last, the seal, best prophet. And so we've got these prophet wars. Hindus might say that Krishna is the greatest prophet, or Rama, or Buddhists would say Buddha's the greatest teacher. Zoroastrians would say Zoroaster is. Marxists would say Marx is. What I'm saying as a philosopher of comparative global philosophy is, let's put the guns down, get out of the trenches, let's honour and appreciate everyone's prophets, and let's create a dialogue of prophetic intelligence sharings towards peace instead of prophetic warfare, which is what's going on. And I think every serving policeman and officer in the army in every country should swear an oath of allegiance to work for peace. These forces roaming around with guns shouldn't be turning them on people just because they're a slightly different ethnicity or colour or faith. No, each serving officer in the military around the planet should swear an oath of loyalty to humanity, to our species essence, as Marx would have called it. And that to me is true prophetic intelligence. And my friend Shlomo Sohan, judge in Israel, has written a book about future intelligence. He's arguing that. And without that, we won't survive as a species. We either live up to our species essence, sapiens, or we fail. And there isn't a planet B. This is it, folks. Right, I think if anyone, if you have any questions, you can always email me. I'm happy to share that. And we have a guest here at the visiting the museum who I think might be joining us just for the end. She has a few questions for me, and so she can represent the sort of articulate some of the questions that hopefully you'll enjoy hearing about. And I'm going to ask her a couple of questions too. Right. Okay, so let me introduce Ekaterina, who's from originally Russia, but Latvia, right? And who's come all the way here to spend a few days at the Peace Museum, European Peace Museum. So, my pleasure. Do introduce yourself a bit and then go for the first question. We'll alternate. You ask one and I'll ask one, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Thomas. Yes, I'm Ekaterina, but I go by Kate, and I'm originally from Latvia and speak Russian. I have a technical background in computer science, but then I shifted a little bit to human-computer interaction and design to be a bit of a polymath and see how to design some interesting things. And here I came to find some inspiration to expand, I guess, and gain some ideas on what else can be done with technology or even without to contribute to potentially our society and individuals. So
excellent. Well, welcome. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas, for having me.
Okay.
You touched a lot on transcending also our egoistic traits and fears on the individual levels, and I'm curious if you could share a little bit what are your personal ways to do that and what others could learn on how to transcend this state.
Gosh, it's a good question. I mean, I've lived many lifetimes in one life, and I think that like in quantum physics where energy leaps from one orbit to another. I think in life we leap sometimes. That quantum leap interests me. I think that's the moment of transcendence. I don't believe in transcendence as in like sort of other forms of Gnosticism that say we should leave the body, leave the planet, you know, it's all fallen and evil and so on. No, I think the planet is amazing. It's got everything we need. Like even our bodies are incredible, cells, complexity. We heard from somebody about the neuroscience of love today, you know. We're incredible things. What we need to do is leap to perceive them in a different way. So, and the key I think is love. If we love our bodies, love our minds, love our cultures, love our people, and love the planet. One of the questions I asked the neuroscientists was how, where in the brain does it show up love for the universality, for all humanity, altruism? Where's that, is it found yet, you know? And it's something to do with, to me, it's it's the soul level of being. You see, I think, because I'm a metaphysical philosopher, I think the soul is in the body for one incarnation at a time. But I think we have a reincarnational journey, all of us. We take knowledge, which I don't know how it works physically. I don't know where we store this between lives. But I think that's what happens. And I think, because I've read about near-death experiences, and I've read about, and I've had some of that experience, I've met people who've had it, and past life regression and stuff. If we look at things from that perspective, it takes you out of your ego, because you can't get obsessed by, oh, I'm a Brit, I'm you know, blah, blah. No, I'm just British in this lifetime. I'm just a male British guy in this lifetime. Before that, I've been all kinds of other things. I think quite a good mental game to play is to say, like, look at all the nations of the world and think, well, I've had incarnations in all of those people. I've been American Indian, an Eskimo, African, Egyptian, Chinese, you know, and therefore I'm at one with them all. And you can do that as a meditational exercise. What are the techniques I use? Yeah, I've been meditating pretty much daily since about the age of 18. When I was 19, I wanted to join a Buddhist monastery and become a Buddhist monk. I'd got turned on to Buddhism through early experiences of transcendental, you know, psychedelic use, which was part of the thing in the 70s, and falling in love intensely. That's like a transcendental experience for me. And I realised there was more to life than just, you know, bricks and mortar and bank balances. And I wanted to find this thing called enlightenment that, you know, Alan Watts and Zen were talking about. So I went off and I thought I'd find it in a Buddhist monastery, but then I realised, no, this is bigger than just any one religion. It's bigger than Buddhism. But I learned a lot from Buddhism. I learned disciplined meditation practice. But then I went and lived in Canada for 4 years, and I sat in Quaker meetings and I studied at the foot of Christ. I became more Christian in my thinking because I realised Christ was like a bodhisattva who took this pure compassion into the maelstrom of egotism, into the temple in Jerusalem where everyone was jostling to be a friend of Caesar, and it was ruthless, cutthroat, horrible stuff. And he went in there preaching pure enlightenment and love. And look what happened, he was crucified. But then I had this kind of mystical experience when I was reading Rudolf Steiner's Knowledge of Higher Worlds, and I was looking at esoteric Christianity, that he'd reached a plane of transcendental being which was bigger even than death. I believe that is where we have to go. And once you've been there, you have no fear anymore. You have to, so one of the best routes to transcendence is to transcend fear. And, you know, and we're taught to fear by the instruments of militarism and power, the people that run the temple still, the Roman guards, or the, you know, the people that are sold out to the system. They want us to be in fear, so they pump us with horror movies and war films, and, you know, we're all afraid of the other guy. Well, that's all nonsense. Go with the path of Christ, who said total love, total surrender, you will be looked after. I took that path of faith seriously, and I still do. And since then, yeah, I've meditated in hundreds of hours of meetings in mosques, temples, churches all over the world. and prayed. I think prayer's to me another form of meditation, but it's using words. And I think they're also sacred. I think there's a space for prayer. It's like words can heal, like Beatrice said in the Nobel laureates. And we should all be praying and meditating daily. It's a daily practice, this. And then the other thing I believe strongly is that we should use intellect, and study is a form of transcendence. You see, when I read Thomas Aquinas or Clement of Alexandria or St. John the Divine or the Quran, you know, I'm transported to the mind of the author or the source of that revealed literature. And I think study should not be overlooked. I'm what's called a jnani yogi in Hinduism. There's a recognized branch of yoga. There's hatha yoga, where you do the exercises. There's prana yoga, where you breathe. And then there's jnana yoga, where you intellect. And most people don't really know it exists, you know. And we don't have this word to intellect as a verb. In Latin, it's a verb to intellect. And when I was in the Vatican Library, I discovered there's a book by Abelard on intellecting as a verb. And that means to think deeply. An intellectual is a jnana yogi. And we can all be that. We have that potential. You see, I would like to live in a world where everybody has a PhD in philosophy and can intellect, as well as, you know, like computing or designing, engineering. You know, why can't we do theory and practice? I'd like to have an education system that gave everybody the full humanities, like the periodic table plus, and a technical skill that they can make stuff and mend stuff and heal bodies, you know. Like, we're split into, well, theory doesn't matter. In Britain, they're now closing down all the intellectual branches of universities. They're shutting humanities departments. And I think the government announced, I can't believe it, a 50% cut to all humanities and arts faculties. I mean, this government is tyrannical and treasonous against intellect, you know, and against common sense. So, yes, study is important. That's why I believe in academia and universities and PhDs, and why I bothered. So, okay, that's some of my answer to you. Is that all right?
Yes, it's a very expanded answer.
Okay, sorry. Can I ask you a question? Okay, this is a sort of interesting question, because you're a Russian speaker. Your mum is Russian originally, but then Latvia used to be part of the Soviet Union, part of Russia, kind of culturally, and now it's part of the European Union, right? And so you have a Latvian passport, you can roam around. My question to you is Russia part of Europe? and what do you think about that? Have you thought about that?
A little bit I did, although I don't really think that I'm belonging to Russia in general, because right. I wasn't really raised there, although some of my values do belong to Russian culture. Politically speaking, obviously it's different. The mentality is not very different, but it is quite different to each other. And
have you spent time in Russia? Have you visited?
I've visited it a couple of times on a short period of time, and obviously because it's such a big country, it's hard to not control, but to affect many aspects of the society. So
were you there on holiday kind of thing, like little?
Yes, a little bit on the holiday, and we toured a little bit with the dancing group.
Okay.
So that I could see some differences.
So it's kind of yes and no is the answer.
Yes and no, indeed.
Okay. No, that's fine. Great. Okay. So what's your next question to me?
I guess it's rolling from the first question a little bit, and how do you see schools and universities could integrate this planetary healing and global peace museum mentality into their systems.
Gosh, you know, I'd love the chance to do that. I've thought about this. When I was flying to India a couple of years ago, the plane stopped in Istanbul. We had to change planes, and I'm sitting on the tarmac in Istanbul airport waiting for the flight to Delhi to take off, and I'd flown from Paris, and I got this inspiration as I was sitting there, and I wrote in my notebook, Planetary Education Manual. It's an idea for a book, right? And I got like 12 chapters. I was sitting there, like, because it seems so obvious that we need a planetary perspective on education. And I got the download of what it should contain, this thing. And it's a book I want to, you know, I will write at some point, maybe with UNESCO's help or something, because they're trying to do that kind of thing. You see, I think every child on the planet should learn the basics of our spiritual and intellectual and philosophical heritage. That's our right, our common right. We all are invested in all of them. I have the right to learn about Muhammad fairly and truly. I have the right to learn about Moses or Isaac Luria or Ibn Arabi or Jesus or Pythagoras or Orpheus, or, you know, all the great thinkers and intellectuals of all humanity belong to me and to you and to all of us. And if I go to school, I want my kids, or me in some future life, to have the chance to learn them all, you know. I don't want to be force-fed just one lineage. I don't want to be told, this is the only one. You have to learn that, and all the others are heresies. And that's going on in too many schools, too many countries, where, I mean, if I'm a Uyghur Muslim, I'm not allowed to go to school and learn about Islam. I can't learn about all the great seers and sages of Islam. I have to learn, I have to read a different Quran that's now been written in Chinese, and they've taken out bits they didn't like. They've changed it. And they've made it into a pro-communist Quran. Well, that's cheating. You can't do that, you know. I want my Uyghur Muslim friends to be able to study. And it's interesting, the Uyghurs were incredibly advanced people who helped advance, you know, all kinds of intellectual debates going on in. They were Manichaeans, they were Buddhists, they were not Nestorian Christians, you know. And some Uyghur Muslims translated the Quran into Chinese and studied Confucius and worked out a synthesis between Chinese thought and Islamic thought, like 1,000 years ago. These people ought to be taught in the schools instead of, we hate Uyghurs, they're Muslims, they're terrorists, you know. We're dumbing down our intellectual capacity as a planet by that. Likewise in Tibet, I want children to be able to learn about the mysteries of Tibetan Buddhism, the incredible thinkers like Naropa and Milarepa and all the great Tibetan intellectuals, proudly, and they were all universalists. And they themselves loved the Chinese intellectuals. They got on with the Chinese. I discovered a mathematician in Tibet who was the advisor to the 5th Dalai Lama, who the Jesuits had gone to China. They translated Latin scientific texts into Chinese. Jesuits are serious scholars. They translated like things like Copernicus and all that into Chinese, right? And then this Tibetan guy translated that stuff into Tibetan. Okay, so this is what I mean. Science, knowledge, wisdom is universal. It circulates in all cultures. I don't care if you're Tibetan, Chinese, Uyghur, Christian, German, Buddhist. If you're a person of knowledge, then you're a person of knowledge everywhere. And those are the people we should be learning about in schools. And we all have the potential to grow into that. If we live in a society or a world that supports our genuine intellectual potential to grow, which is what I want, which is what UNESCO wants, which is what the UN wants, what all true scholars want, then we can solve these wars. Because these wars only come because people of lesser capacity still think that those guys are the enemy and they need to be destroyed, you know. And those are, unfortunately, the people that too often write the educational curricula. This is why I'm annoyed at the Tories, which have become a xenophobic, stupid party, now trying to change the curriculum in British schools and to dumb down what kids can learn, you know, and interfere politically with the curriculum. This should be resisted by true scholars and intellectuals in Britain and in every other country where it's happening. To do that, you have to be brave. Kant, who's one of the wisest people of European intellectual history, said, "Dare to be brave, dare to be wise, sapere aude." That should be, if I, you know, when I teach philosophy, when I'm head of department, I'm going to put that above every classroom, you know, like a thing on the wall. That should be in every philosophy and religious studies department in the world. Final point, what could we do? What single thing would most help? I think it's if every school on the planet had the periodic table. Because once you've read that and seen it, it's like the mist comes away from your eyes. You realise, gosh, this world is really complex and really interesting. It's got all this stuff. Let's learn about it, you know. So that's my revolutionary manifesto for global planetary education.
That's the first step for sure.
There we are. Is that part of an answer?
For sure.
Yeah? Okay. Right, so I have another question. It's a sort of vision I want to share with you. I mean, why can't we have a Russian-EU peace treaty? I mean, you know, you're a culturally Russian, but not politically. But if we got an actual formal treaty between the EU and Russia, I don't know why they haven't done this, so that Russians could come and visit and travel around Europe and, you know, go to universities, and we can visit Russia, and all this kind of like anti-Russian propaganda, which is a throwback to the Cold War, could stop. And as part of that peace treaty, then the Russians would have to promise not to hack into the EU computers and, you know, and all that stuff that allegedly is going on. I don't know if it's going on. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think all that should stop, because I think ordinary Russians and ordinary Europeans in the rest of Europe, actually we love each other, we want to live in peace. Anyway, what do you think of my theory? And can you design a software thing that can help? What could you design that would help make that happen?
Well, I would love to make that happen for the entire planet and not just Europe and Russia, but let's begin with this.
Let's
first.
begin with that challenge, yeah.
I think you touched on the point of the social media and this information distribution, and this really impacts this at some point, that there's so many different sources, and not sort of a propaganda, but people read different information, and this influences our thinking, and we're purely not even targeted, but we're affected by the content that we're receiving.
Yeah, yeah.
And maybe we should be looking at the information that is given to us, sort of a universal truth, and agree on some parts of it. So maybe that could be an interesting point to start with, to integrate this war between the information that's given to the people.
Okay. For instance, the Russians have an equivalent to Facebook, don't they, called VK?
Yes.
Do you have that? Do you use that ever?
I'm on it, but I don't use it that much because I'm mainly in Europe now, so I'm using Facebook more.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I use VK, but I don't see it does much. I mean, it's not as interactive as Facebook.
Not really, yes.
I mean, so we need to make that better as a tool and use it to spread more peace, you know. I don't know. I mean, I think the Russians are peace-loving people at heart, but they just need to step up and do it